I want to take you on a celestial journey of faith and share and reveal to you some amazing things that may give you a whole new perspective on the world we live in, our place in time, and even a glimpse of what's to come. So, prepare to see the heavens as you have never seen them before. This is the Bible in the Stars. Time, an inescapable attribute of the human condition, a journey upon which all who enter into this world must partake. We live in an age where the keeping track of time is something that takes very little effort, if any at all. All that is required to know the exact month, date, hour, and minute of our present reality is to take a quick glance at the home screen of the phone in your pocket. For the ancients, however, things were not quite so easy. It says very early on in the Bible that the sun, moon, and stars were given for the purposes of keeping time. They were to be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years, according to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. All our modern systems of timekeeping were mere derivatives of the going-ons taking place in the heavens above. Even where our chronological methodologies have departed somewhat from the orbits of celestial bodies, there still exists an echo of the sources from which they were derived. Take, for example, the word month. The term is derived from the word moon, which hints at its origins. Although the modern moonth, or month as we know it, no longer is tied to the lunar phases, it still bears a faint resemblance to its source in its approximately 30-day on average monthly cycles. By understanding where our modern calendar and system of timekeeping came from, and how the ancients understood their systems of time, we can begin to open up a world that reveals much more than just the mere ticking off of segmented moments into the future. You see, for the ancients, timekeeping was more than just a mere measurement of our passage through this life. It was a vast canvas upon which the Creator painted incredible stories and communicated divine ideals to a humanity perched far beneath the starry firmament. Many of these stories are echoed themselves, often in corrupted form, through the various astronomical histories of many cultures around the globe. It is the proposition of this video, however, to show that the true uncorrupted story laid out in the stars above is in fact biblical in origin, that there is a retelling of the very words of God found in the Holy Scriptures in the stars above. Thousands of years ago, man looked up into the night sky with awe and wonder over the awesome splendor of God's creation. He pondered the movements of the heavenly luminaries and tracked their motions in order to better understand the meaning and purpose to this grand cosmic dance of lights. Before there was television, movies, or internet, before there were books or even papyrus, there were the stars and the myths and traditions that were handed down about them, retold around innumerable campfires and ancient dwellings for untold generations into the past. One must imagine how that very first time in which eyes beheld such spectacle must have felt for the beholder, Perhaps they were overcome by an overwhelming sense of awe and amazement, and cried out and gave glory to the Creator who could make such incredible things, while simultaneously grasping the sudden comprehension of their own smallness in the midst of it all. At some point, however, a divergence of this worshipful attitude took place, becoming misdirected toward the creation itself rather than its author. Instead of rendering glory to the designer of it all, some fell into idolatry, turning the stars themselves into gods rather than worshiping the God behind the stars. They invented mythologies that diverged greatly from the author's original intent, and this became astrology, a sin against the original design. But the original story and purpose do still remain, embedded in the skies above, where no man can change their courses and no outstretched fleshly arm can reach. The sky is and has always been God's clock in the heavens, as described in the Bible, and despite the attempt of man to write into the heavens their own versions of his story, the signs and omens which he prescribed remain untouched for a captive audience below. To understand the mechanics of God's cosmic clock, we must first look at how the ancients saw and understood the skies, and only then will we begin to acquire the tools necessary to reveal the messages and meanings entrenched within them. Stop. When we think of a clock, the elements of measurement are quite rudimentary. A hand to measure the hours, another to keep track of the minutes, a third to tick off the seconds. The face of the clock is divided into 12 numerical subsections, each for the express purpose of calibrating for the viewer the precise moment being measured upon by the hands. 4 simple elements. That is, unless, of course, your clock is an alarm clock, in which case we can add a 5th element, an arbitrary appointed time set to alert the hearer of some preordained event. Or perhaps it is an hourly chime, a non-arbitrary event which is periodic in nature. Perhaps the clock is a stopwatch, measuring minute fractions of a second, or a digital clock, with the ability to show days and months, or a reminder of some key event or task, like some of the apps on your computer or phone. Clocks can measure many elements of time. But ask most of us to picture an analog clock in our mind, and we think of those 3 hands of measurement: hours, minutes, and seconds. For the ancients, however, their clock did not have 3 hands, but 7. Because the hands of their clock were the stars above, or rather specifically the sun, the moon, and the 5 planets of our solar system, which are visible to the naked eye. Why these 7? Because of all the stars in the sky which appeared to march in fixed motion together each night, these 7 broke ranks and appeared to the observer to move separately and independent from all the rest of the stars above. Let us therefore now endeavor to understand these 7 hands of God's clock in the heavens, and how the ancients used them to tell time. First, however, we must begin with the face of the clock. For without a clock face as a frame of reference, the hands of the clock would become meaningless. On an earthly clock, we know that there are 12 divisions of hours and that the 12th hour is positioned at the top of the clock. It is both the starting point and end point simultaneously for each cycle of the clock's hands. In the clock in the sky, however, instead of numbers as a frame of reference, we have constellations, or rather specifically, the 12 constellations of the zodiac. Each of these 12 signs serves as a number on the cosmic clock. As the Earth rotates about on its axis over a 24-hour period, we are given a view of each of these 12 signs over the course of a night before they again return to their starting point one full day later. Indeed, the entirety of the stars above rises and sets daily, just as the sun, moon, and planets do. This is the face of the clock. However, even though the sun, moon, and planets rise and set daily as do the stars, these 7 each move at different paces than all the other stars, so that their daily rising and setting will not appear to be in tandem with the rest of the sky. Over the course of time, days, months, and even years, these 7 will make a full, complete revolution through all the signs of the zodiac, before returning back again to their original positions. Each will do its own separate pace through the night sky. If the stars are the face of the clock, then these are the 7 hands. Because the sun moves through the zodiac over the course of a year on average, we have the net effect of seeing the stars rise and set a little bit differently with each passing night. This is caused by the orbit of the Earth around the sun annually. With each month that goes by, we will see on average a new sign of the zodiac rising and setting with the sun, so that the face of the clock itself will appear to make one full revolution over the course of a year. With that understanding in mind, let us now move on to the 7 hands. The first, the sun, is of course the easiest. Its apparent rotation denotes for us one full day, and it spends 1 month in each of the 12 signs of the zodiac, a total journey of 12 months or 1 year. Jupiter spends 1 year in each sign of the zodiac for a total journey of 12 years. The moon takes about 29.5 days, as we mentioned, to make a full zodiac cycle and bypass the sun again. Saturn takes about 29.5 years to traverse the zodiac before returning to its original position. The sun will, of course, appear to rise and set 365 times during the course of the year, plus approximately 1 quarter day extra. Because of the extra quarter day, there is a leap day added to the calendar every 4 years on February 29th on the Gregorian calendar. This is what is known as a solar calendar. That is to say, its year is derived from the annual revolution of the sun around the 12 signs of the zodiac every 365 days. Except, of course, on leap years, where the number of days becomes 366. A lunar solar calendar, however, as was used by the ancients, is tagged instead to the 12 annual cycles of the moon through the zodiac. Because the number of days in 12 lunar months does not exactly equal the number of days in 1 solar year, this necessitates a leap month to be added every few years or so. These 2 calendar types, the solar and lunar solar, come into alignment every 19 years when the phases of the moon for any given day roughly match their positions on the solar calendar from 19 years prior. This is what is known as the metonic cycle. Mercury and Venus are inner planets. They are never more than 1 or 2 signs away from the sun at any given time, and will dance around it constantly with their orbits, not unlike a pair of pet dogs on a leash following their owner on a brisk walk through the zodiac each year. Mercury's orbital leash keeps it within a range of 1 sign from the sun, while Venus will stay within 2 signs of the sun. Mercury will appear to loop around the sun roughly somewhat about every 4 months or so, whereas Venus will appear to do so about every 19 months. However, the orbits of Mercury and Venus around the sun will form patterns over the course of years. When measured on the same date annually, Mercury will bypass its anniversary date position every 7 years, while Venus will appear to repeat the same pattern around the sun every 8 years. It is important to note that the 7-day week has no immediate astronomical equivalent. Some assert that it evolved from an approximate quarter phase of the moon during the approximate days that it is visible, as was used by the ancient Babylonians. The days were later named after pagan gods for the 7 visible luminaries that they represented. Other cultures, like ancient Rome, first had an 8-day week based on a market day system, but later switched to 7 days. Weeks were important as societies needed frequent cyclical gatherings for things such as trade, government, and religious purposes. That is to say, it is not attached to any particular celestial body with a 7-day periodicity. But the real reason for our 7-day week can be found in the Bible, where it says that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. Looking at Mars now, we find that it takes about 2 years for it to traverse the zodiac, or rather 1.9 years to be more precise, but to keep things simple, we'll round it off to 2 years or 24 months. The time it takes for Mars to traverse the zodiac and bypass the sun again can vary on average, but usually takes around between 25 to 26 months from cycle to cycle. The zodiac itself will shift spaces over time. This is due to the Earth's wobble on its axis, and takes about 25,000 to 26,000 years to complete a full cycle. This is called the Great Year or Platonic Year. This effect causes seasonal shift, so that where once the first day of spring may have begun in one sign of the zodiac after approximately 2,000 years or so, it will begin in the next sign over. In reality, this is closer to 2,200 years, but we will round it off to 2,000 to keep things simple. There are a total of 12 of these shifts in one complete Platonic year. These periods, or shifts, are known as ages. The end of one age and the beginning of another is a debated topic, and it is not precise, since there is no actual observable line in the sky separating one sign of the zodiac from the next. It is presently believed that we are leaving the age of Pisces and beginning to enter the age of Aquarius. A planet passing through a sign in the zodiac will sometimes backtrack for a period of time before moving forward again. This is called a retrograde motion, and its observation is caused by the Earth passing by that particular planet as it orbits the Sun. Mars, for example, will spend on average around a month and a half in each sign of the zodiac, yet can spend as much as 7 months in a sign during retrograde. So then, we see that there are 3 types of cycles to the stars: the 24-hour daily cycle, for the stars to make one rotation around the night sky; a yearly cycle, where a new sign of the zodiac will rise and set with the sun each month; and the Platonic year, where the spring equinox will shift over one sign, denoting a new age about every 2,000 years or so, taking 12 ages to complete one full cycle. Because the stars revolve once daily, we can see about half of the constellations, and thus half of the zodiac, or 6 signs, just after sunset, and the other half just before dawn, as the Earth will have rotated 180 degrees by this point. As such, it was important for the ancients to perform their observations at these 2 times, pre-dawn and nightfall, in order to be able to fully catalog the entirety of the night sky. The evening and the morning are important time periods, and the Bible refers to them often.